Good evening, everyone. System Chalk here for the 7th episode of our House of Light run, our YouTube run through House of Light. I'm going to take some time to talk about the stream for this week and then a couple of other things that came up from the comments. Thank you for those. It does mean that it's going to be a little while to get to the gameplay, but this is something I kind of wanted to get out of the way at the very beginning. So first of all, thank you to those of you who pointed out a problem with the saves at the beginning. So apparently in the Steam stream, I had a later save about an hour worth of gameplay, which I didn't recognize at the time that I started this one. Now, the way that I'm going to handle that is I'm just going to move forward because it doesn't seem to make sense to undo 2 hours worth of effort to bring back an hour of gameplay, but I do apologize to those of you who maybe wouldn't have watched that hour had they known that the playthrough would have turned out the way that it is. I'm unfortunately committed to the mistake now, but I think this will still be an interesting run for it. There was also a comment about the playlist. So this sort of stuff I actually find very helpful because anything that involves finding the video on YouTube is less likely for me to notice. I have my dashboard, I don't actively go out and look for my videos, and very often I rely on a little algorithm that I've got for setting up the videos. Just I do a certain number of things in a certain order to make sure that they get released in sort of a uniform way. And in this case here, because I recorded the video at one time, but I had to edit it and upload it and do all these other things, that sort of disrupts that whole system. So if that sort of thing doesn't get pointed out to me, it's going to sit unaddressed for a really long time. And I know some people are a little reluctant to make comments just because I don't like being told how to play the game. And that's still true. I don't want to be told how to play the game. But that is not the same as, hey, it would help me if the videos were in the right order on the playlist. And obviously, you know, the less it's framed as, hey, you idiot, don't you know how YouTube works, and more, hey, just so you know, it's not in the right order. This is stuff that's very helpful, and I want to take the time to say thank you for that, even though I know it breaks the cardinal rule of get on with it in terms of YouTube videos. So thank you everybody for that. Now, the only other thing that I need to say about this week is that it's very busy for work. I'm likely just going to record this video to make sure that there's a Monday episode, and I will record the rest of the week on Tuesday. So I'm going to be both forgetful for Friday's episode because there's a couple of similarities. An example that I'll give of this, I've got this salt memory, but I don't 100% remember what I was going to use it for. Presumably something related to Etery After or Crossing to Noon. I suspect Crossing to Noon, but we'll see. And the real dilemma here is that it's similar to something that I did in my Steam playthrough, and I didn't make any notes on the pad here, the iPad that I have for my gameplay notes. So we'll figure it all out while we play, but it's always I feel a little foolish when people are looking at the videos and probably have better knowledge of the playthrough than I do at this time. And I'll not do a long introduction like this on Wednesday's episode, but I'll probably have a similar level of forgetting in terms of the video, just because if I break up the series into a couple of parts, it's always hard to keep track of where I was. But with that in mind, let's run into the rest of the game. We're going to advance time, and then... Did Arthur Moore receive my invitation? Okay, so I was sending out the invitations. That may have been because I wanted Sabazine. In fact, that definitely looks like I was getting Sabazine. If we completed one of the further stories, one of these constellations should be brighter. So I'm going to go so far as to say that we're picking up Sabazine from Arthur Thomas Moore. I completely forgot that I was doing that. Although that's fine, because it's another thing for me to commit to the tree. And then, depending on what happens with the weather... Okay, so those are in a language that I don't understand. This we've already committed. So let's just take a minute to think about this. So if we've got the crossing to noon, and then my highest moon would be the Edict's Marshal, at which point we would add the Tryst, and then we would add the Lunar Globe. So I can read the crossing to noon, but I wouldn't do that with Assault, which makes me wonder why I saved that. Etri after... We are close. So I don't have the soul card. Well, yeah, we're not as close as I think I am, so not much to be done there. Although I do need to remember that the bronze knife has winter. And then the Rose of Hypatia isn't relevant for the salt. And in fact, we don't have... At least I don't think we have a moth desk to work with. Although in theory, I could take... I know we did this in the previous episodes, I'm just trying to remember where I was going with it. So Edict's Liminal doesn't really work for that. Yeah. It does make me feel like we were going to try and level up Crossing to noon, but it does invite the question, like, what did I think I was going to get done by bringing in Sea Stories, knowing that Sea Stories was going to... that was going to be a new skill. Actually, maybe what it was, it could have been related to one of the letters I was going to write. So if I look at it that way, we've got Forge, Scale, Lantern, and... well, none of those are relevant, so... yeah, I'm stumped, actually. I'm trying to think why I brought that salt. But it does seem to me like I have a pretty straightforward path. So the first thing I want to do is find something with more moons so I can read the Crossing to noon. And that would be anything with Impulse. Confounding Parable should do it. So I think probably the Shaft is my best bet here. I'm feeling quite nervous in terms of the different things that I can commit. And it's just because if I don't want to get too reckless with this, but basically if I... Sorry, I'm actually really taking a minute here. So here are my thoughts in terms of how I can handle the next couple of days. So I do want to get a Salon done. Now, a Salon's not the easiest thing because, you know, I have all the cooking to do. I know that was a target, and I think the plan was going to be I wanted to try and do something in the garden. In fact, I think the garden is the only room that I can host a Salon in. So with that in mind, we have room for 5... technically 4 of the special visitors if I want. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we could add Douglas Moore. So we have enough to bring in the 5. I would need to make all of the different recipes, which is not easy. But we definitely have a real shot of making this work. But I do actually need to put the effort into that and getting that done sooner rather than later. would be preferred. Now, one of the drawbacks behind this is I don't have a lot of elements of the soul, and so that's going to take some time to learn the skills, commit them to the Tree of Wisdoms. I do have a little bit of a plan in place. So it's essentially, this is just a question of trying to find the best way to use the available resources during the day. So for instance, here, there's a strong argument for me to use the kitchen range a whole lot to learn some recipes. Alternatively, I could talk to the chickens more and get the eggs, or I could do the gardening here and gain those. All of them have a very reasonable argument for them. So I think probably the way I'm going to handle this is I'm going to try and read as many books as I can. So that will mean Crossing to Noon is, that'll be something that we read right away. For the next step, I mean, maybe I don't need to get clever about it. Maybe we really do just focus on reading the one book, given that Rose of Hypatia we don't really have access to until we open up the 3rd floor of the Motley Tower. So I think probably at this point the better option is for me to see what the weather brings. That's going to have a pretty clear effect on... Okay, so this is about equivalent to me keeping the salt. But fair enough. So it would seem to me that today we'll set aside the tryst for the Crossing to Noon. Maybe we... So the core and the health, I think, would be good to put towards tending the chickens and such. And perhaps the way I do this will go Shaft at the Sweet Bones, just so that I can keep the money going. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 worth of odd jobs, or at a coin to find visitors seeking employment. I will use the metal to catalog one of the books. So I can't remember if it was this playthrough or another one, but it does turn out that metal, so far as I can tell, doesn't seem to get an affliction. So in this case, we can use that for the Curia period and the Baronial period, and then the other ones we can use for the Nocturnal period. And I, of course, have the option of restoring these using money or using glasses of water, which we will eventually do. Actually, on that note, let's go... Yeah, so we definitely can get vegetables. I actually think at this point, let's get the egg from the chicken. Tuppence. Tuppence's most notable quality, all observers will agree, is that she is not Terence. Offer this beast my company, who knows? Perhaps it will offer something in return. And then for the core and the health, previously I used to stock up a bunch of grapes for the chickens, but I think maybe either tending the ordinary gardens or getting vegetables would be the right call here. So in summer, moth orchids, fragrant chalice, trumpeter's lily. There is an argument for keeping all of those, but I'm going to settle for vegetables. Sort of under the understanding that I will be restoring these with the water. So I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. This will complete once dawn has come. So whatever plan I had for the salt, I must confess it's completely eluded me, but we can always carry that over into the next day if it comes down to it. I don't want to go too crazy as far as the vegetables are concerned. I should also take a minute here and see if there's anything with moth or... Well, the wine cellar will be tricky but not impossible. Now's a good season for me to make the most of the barber. The rose may have something here. Old Copper-Nose and the Softer Metal, a disgraceful compendium of ribald poetry about the habits and corruptions of Henry VIII. Okay. So I'm going to try to keep... I know I had a little bit of a system in place here, but I think it's about to fall apart. I'll put this over here, but so we can definitely read this. Whether we want to try and move up bells and braziers is another question. But I think what we'll do before I go too much further, every time we work at the Sweet Bones, we'll get 6 pence. So it takes 2 pence to restore an element of the soul. So one way of thinking of this is that basically you get three restorations. Did Arthur Moore receive my invitation? Arthur Moore, hero, pilgrim, traitor. He'll always be a soldier, but never again can he be only a soldier. So he's got a lantern. Now, for some reason, I didn't actually write this down, so... So in 23 seconds, we'll be able to set him to work teaching me Sabazine. I could try and do that later on in the day, but we're more or less committed to not doing anything else. So, The Locksmith's Dream, Portions and Proportions, the second volume of Teresa Galmier's examination of parallels in mystic dreams of artisans. The frontispiece has been slashed with a razor. In this volume, Galmier records fewer dreams and explicates more on her own elaborate theories. We see this again and again. What is below can't escape what is above. The finest artisans all dream of the white door in the end. I'm no artisan, only a scholar. I think there's a secret that all these artisans know, but I think that secret is only half the story. So, confounding parable. This is going to be what allows me to read the next book. And then finally we add the lunar globe. Moon, a culmination. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. It is summer. I am sitting on this bench outside the Sweet Bones, eating crumbly cheese and nettle wrappings and good black rye bread, soaking up the sun. And now it suggests a meal would be welcome. So the chickens are going to have to wait a little while before being fed. I'm hoping we are not in a animal farm situation here. But let's bring Arthur Thomas Moore in, and we'll pay him. Good day to you. May I come in? Tutoring in Sabazine. My visitor can teach me the rudiments of this enigmatic language. After tutoring you, the visitor will leave, even if they arrived on other business. So we've got Fusine, we've got Ramsand. We have... I think I went over the potential lessons. So I know Fraser Strathcoyne can give me Ramsand. I think Serena was the one to give me Fusine. Of course, we're already talking with Arthur Moore, who can give me Sabazine. I feel like there was one other one that I can learn. I remember Hokabald gives me Deep Mandaic, although I think Douglas only knows Greek. Carrots, tomatoes, marrows, and blessed onions, all the unsung heroes of the stew pot. Okay. I think we're going to have to just settle for putting this in the mailbox for now. So the plan here was just take in this case I'll use the core, and a glass of water. We've got more than one of these, so what I'll do is maybe one of these I can restore, well, I wouldn't be 90 seconds with that, but yeah, eventually the plan is I'll maybe use one to restore the supply of water, and then the other one maybe to restore access to something like vegetables again. Again, the lack of elements of the soul is more of a constraint on the day. I usually wind up sort of finishing everything at the beginning of the day, and then we just wait for the timer to wind down. But could be worse. All right, so we'll restore the metal here. And I suppose the question is, do I want to try and do anything with the shaft? One option I suppose that I have is... Sorry, just taking a second here to make sure that I'm not missing anything obvious with... Oh, I do have some... So I'm assuming this is a place where I was setting aside something that can potentially be used later. Or maybe not. So if I've got metal 2, bells and braziers brings me up to 5, foresight, we can definitely read this one. So yeah, maybe it is the readability that I was holding back on. That'll be the new meaning. But yeah, so there's a few things that I can do with knock. I suppose the question is, what do I think is the most useful? So I don't believe I have access to something that will let me use more than one knock. There are certain shrines that will. Sorry, that's not entirely true. Well, sorry. It is, because I can't use more than one memory. However, if I do that... So one option I have is, I believe I have an early Gervanite. Yes. So under fuel, a Hawthorn blank would help here. Although because this is really just for experimentation. So I would normally put the Sacrament Acite, but I think if I have a Glassfinger Toxin, that's slightly better in terms of saying what I can do. So the reason why this is important here is that this is 12 knock. So any of the scholar level recipes are now available to me. So now we know how to make Glassfinger Toxin. So here we would need here we would need glass. This is presumably to make Gervanite. Now one option that I would have here, I believe, would be the Amethyst Ampule. I don't recall if I've made one yet, but glass flowing and... Okay, Orichalcum. So I've learned some basics. So we'll knock this one out. We'll add Lockworks and Clockworks again. So at this point, it's really just a matter of glass. Amethyst Ampule does not seem to be available, but possibly I could add sand. Although whether it will accept sand is another question. Not in this case. So glass that's either fuel or liquid. It really does feel like the Amethyst Ampule is my only option here. I know the necropsy table sometimes has some options that aren't immediately obvious to me, but let's see if there's something we can do with... Okay, a flower, and we're really back to the same problem. Okay, well that gives me an obvious thing to do with the knock, though. So blend acids for a paradoxical knock ampule. Lockworks and Clockworks with Prentice level knock creates Amethyst Ampule, or for a scholar level recipe, if I add glass, I'll create a knock alloy of interest to the most ambitious clockmakers. Again, a little bit of an unexpected turn, but one that I'm not completely unhappy with. It could be, too, that I wound up preserving the salt just because we read To a Pale Lady and I didn't want to lose the memory. It may have been that I wasn't saving it for anything special. I should take a minute here to think about how I might advance through the house. So technically this knock and lantern is available to me at any time. The abandoned bedroom would be interesting as soon as I get a fete, because with the barber we can automatically turn him to 3 with my elements of the soul, and then 5 once we have, in fact, maybe even if we don't rely on the elements of the soul, we could still get him up to 5. Before we do that, though, The Crossing to Noon. The mystic Garcia Sauri gives a picturesque account of the adventures of Franklin Bancroft, Prince of Wines, and Ava de Wolf, the Pale Lady, on their way to the hidden island of Noon. For a long time, the Blackbone pondered her next move, until the moon dared to peep from behind a cloud, and the prince completed the composition of his third sestina. But the lady met the blind gaze of its open pores, waiting for the tide. Garcia Sauri acknowledges in an epilogue that it is widely known that Ava, in fact, tragically drowned herself and her twin infant granddaughters, without ever making such a journey. But he adds contemptuously, it is also widely known that the city unbuilt will so remain, that only one history is ever written, and that Janus is a Mansus prank. So just as well that we used the salt, because we would have doubled up anyway. So first step is to add sea stories to the list. Use this lesson to acquire a new skill. Now, it's an interesting question in terms of whether I want to advance these beyond 2. So there's an argument that some things like Edicts Liminal, actually there's quite a few of these, might be better suited to be in position 2 than the other, but I think in this case here I'll just take sea stories and put it to the appropriate level. We will restore shops. I'll probably turn this into a money-making opportunity here. As far as the metal goes, though, it's maybe a little late for me to try and read Old Copper-Nose and the Softer Metal, but I don't think it's too late for me to catalog another book. In fact, another thing I should do to restore my elements of the soul, I should be taking one of the, I guess the Trist or maybe the Grail. The Core, I mean. I should be getting that ready for for leveling something up. Alright, it has its uses, but none of them are simple and few are safe. Amethyst Ampule. Were it released from the glass, it would be quite another color. 2 heart, 2 knock, liquid, and glass. I deserved a little quiet time. Okay. It's a little late. Actually, I think in this case, I will use the water for the Trist, because it's occurred to me that I can, with this, I'll be able to level up sea stories. I can use the core for something else, so I can either get vegetables, probably a little late, or probably a little premature for water. We will have the 2 grapes. I think I'll maybe get some more grapes, actually. The logic there is I'm going to be giving up these 2 grapes to feed the chickens anyway. And then, yeah, I think we're good. Maybe a little uncertain. I guess maybe what we do is we use the sea story, or the clouds with the sea stories. Okay, sea stories. The sea has always been the widest road. Now, we'll be thinking a little bit of the next day. Clearly, I don't have too many expectations in terms of my ability to remember this, but it would still be nice to sort of work out a bit of a game plan. First of all, we've got the radical measure. Ooh, and it's cursed, so a wink well. Sometimes, when I turn this book to the right angle, I see an eye peering at me from its pages or covers. They close and fade when I leave them in the dark, but light will always bring them out eventually. This can affect your fet and whist and spread to nearby objects. You can remove it with a skill that's effective against corruption and at least 7 moon. So we've got infestations, corruption, contamination. Might have been, just to see here, winter, heart, moon. Okay. I was just trying to see if maybe the salt would help me with removing a curse, but I don't think it does. One other reflection that I had, so if I was going to hire Reverend Timothy, so Reverend Timothy has 1 knock. We talked to him about Shap. That's 2. 3. Well, yeah, still can't come up with a justification for the salt. But I'm going to need to make some final decisions. And then I was talking about a game plan for tomorrow, but let's work out our last choices here. So, if I want to make money, this is the last chance for me to do so with the shaft. So the question is there something really important that I need to do with this shaft right now? Cataloging is always an option, but I think we're okay on that score. So this time I will make sure that we're on basically in the black for today as far as money. And this is going to be because I wind up ordering some things from TU. Actually, I should maybe get that order in now. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs, or add a coin to find visitors seeking employment. I'm gonna regret loading up the house with all of this, but let's do 3 almonds for a start. Always important to use perenculate. Deadly, use gloves to read text produced by this pigment. An ink of power. I've learnt enough to puzzle out books in this language, though it might be slow going. Sabazine, there is a history where Alexander defeated the first great knot of Sabazos, and then the King of Kings. There is another history where, instead, he learnt from them. How many more? If we curl our hands into the correct shapes, we may yet understand. So I believe the plan was to put Sabazine in Birdsong. Yes, because we put Ramsund in Preservation. Although we also have the option of Horomachistry. The Fisher's Tale. There is a story told by fisherfolk about a city of amber and orichalcum that lies beneath the waves. Those who eat of its fruits can breathe water and drink light, but they can never drink anything else afterwards. Only in another history, they say, but if you tie your nets right, you might just catch one of its citizens in this history, and they might tell you the way. Okay, so I certainly have more than enough Trist, but it is a chance for me to do something new with it. So let's take a moment and figure out what a... Well, actually feeding the chickens is an option. And not a bad one. Feed the beastie. Satisfy this creature's appetite. Food will make a hungry beast or a wild one cooperative. Get ready to prepare the drink, and then we still need to keep ordering. So 2 almonds. We'll order a 3rd. Pour it out. Okay, so that's the almonds taken care of. We'll maybe do 2 beef. We'll also do 2 plums. I may not do the whole order on this video just because I know it'll take a while. It's 5 seconds for each part of the order, and I can pause so I can make this last quite a while. Now technically I would have use for 3 pheasant. Whether I do that is another question. Yeah, I might as well. 3 pheasant. Alright, so this tryst is going to be used to level up sea stories. We'll do that right now. Oops. There's always more to learn. Okay, like I said, 3 pheasant on this one. This is one of these cases where I'm really looking to try and get to the pantry. Alright, night has fallen, dawn will come soon. Rest on the salt. Third pheasant. Okay, so we've got almonds have been taken care of, beef have been taken care of, plums, pheasant. I don't need any of these. Okay, so it's really Cater and Hero that I want to order from next. So it turns out we will send off the order form tonight. Provide money equal to the cost the postmistress will make out a postal order. So I don't know. Yeah, 120 is more than enough. Complete the order. So the next obvious step is take the Cater and Hero form and bring in all that stuff that I wanted but couldn't get. But we'll deal with that next stream, I think. Well, we can at least take a peek. So don't need the dripping. A lot of flour, milk, potato. Well, potatoes technically I can get out of these, but that would cost me elements of the soul, so it may make sense to just order the potatoes on their own. But yeah, flour, butter, sugar, as much of that as we can get. The only thing here really is that we don't have a whole lot of space in the house. The postmistress signs and seals the order, places it in the place that stamped orders are properly placed. Wait 3 days, she commands. Okay. Pretty happy with how that went. And I think we're getting close to 10 minutes over today, so I think now would not be a bad time to wrap it all up. I will just give a rough idea in terms of where I see the playthrough going in the next episode, and of course we can see whether or not my predictions come true. It would never hurt to take a... Oh, you know what? I wonder if I was going to try and make a cat wink using inks of containment. Anyways, question for another time. But yeah, so I want to, where I can, I would like to try and invite as many guests who can teach me languages as I can. And then second to that, I would like to try and invite guests for a salon just because that will give me more lessons that I can use to improve my skills. That's a very easy way for me to do that without necessarily having to read the books. And more importantly, the Physic Garden will not be available for a salon for the rest of the year once summer's done. So unless I plan on opening up one of the other salon rooms, which would be 7 Grail or 7 Nectar or 8 Edge or 8 Winter. Not impossible, but not immediately available to me. I probably want to try and do a garden party. So that's a not a drop everything goal, but it is definitely one that I want to try and work on before the end of the season. In terms of books to read, we can just kind of keep digesting these ones. I'm not quite sure why Etery After is on this list of books that I can potentially read, because I don't yet have Whist. Ragged Crossroads gives me 3, A Memory gives me 5, but I don't have, well, and I guess 6 with the tool. So until I get Whist, it's not really available to read, although I suppose if I get lucky with A Memory, that would work. The Rose of Hypatia is something that I should be able to work with, provided that I'm able to get up to the 3rd floor of the Motley Tower, but that would really require a storm in this case. And at that point, it's actually trivial. My other alternative would be we take Mrs. Kill with her 1 heart, we add the core for 3, a regular memory for 2. Actually, yeah, and then we just use the kitchen bowls, so it might be an idea to invite Mrs. Kill next. The drawback here would be I would need to use this core to invite her and then restore it and move her up again. But the usefulness of a moth desk for reading something like the Rose of Hypatia can't be overstated, especially because weaving and not working would give me an option to create Periviat, which I can use to invite Fraser Strathcoyne. So yeah, I think probably for the next little while, books should be considered targets of opportunity right now, particularly something like Bells and Braziers, which doesn't necessarily have a role in the Tree of Wisdoms yet. I do have some designs for it, but I want to get to a point where I have the relevant elements of the soul a little bit faster. So I think the next little bit we will focus on opening up some rooms, getting some inks, and seeing if we can host this salon sooner rather than later. But of course, all of that will happen in the rest of the week. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you Wednesday.